Pete, thanks for stopping by and talk to us about your candidacy. The one thing I wanted to ask you is, well, basically just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from?
Pete Hegseth. I'm running for the U.S. Senate seeking the Republican endorsement. I grew up in Forest Lake, went to Forest Lake High School. I live in Stillwater today with my wife Samantha. We've got a young son, Gunnar, and another one on the way in August. And I'm in this race because I believe in America and what it is, what it represents, and what it can be, and I want to fight for it.
Sure. So you've got quite a kind of an uphill battle here. You got quite a very heavily populated field of folks that you're running against right now on the Republican side. Tell us what distinguishes you from the other candidates that you're running against right now.
I could beat Amy Klobuchar. We need a candidate that can bring everything necessary to bear in order to beat her in November. And it's going to require articulating a simple message focused on jobs and the economy and debt and deficit, hitting people where they're at, using simple messaging and repeating it. It's going to take grassroots energy and buzz and excitement. And I know we can do that crisscrossing the state, getting people invested and interested in the race. It's going to take national media attention. Senate races are no longer just statewide affairs. They include bringing in conservative outlets and national outlets that are willing to take a look at a race that they otherwise wouldn't. And it's going to take resources too. And I can raise the kind of dollars that will be necessary in order to articulate a message, both to talk about who we are and also why Amy Klobuchar has not served the state of Minnesota well.
That's interesting. Why don't you just quick tell me what distinguishes you primarily from Amy Klobuchar versus Pete Hegseth? What's the takeaway?
It's a fundamental difference. I mean, her belief is that jobs will come back to our economy through $1 trillion stimulus spending, through more government programs, that we solve the debt and deficit problem we have with more taxes, that it is a dependency culture, that we should be putting more people on the government rolls. Whereas, from my perspective, the belief is we provide jobs by getting out of the way of job creators to create private job creation. And you do that by lessening the tax burden and taking government out of people's lives and out of the business realm. So it's a fundamental difference between the role of government, whether it should be a large government or a smaller government, how much role the government should play in people's lives, how much they should get out of the way and allow the private sector, the free enterprise system, people to be responsible for their own outcomes. So it's a stark contrast, and it will be about what she's done over the last 6 years. And she talked like she was going to be a fiscal conservative, and then she went to Washington and voted for everything that is added to the debt and deficit crisis that we have right now.
Sure.
Minnesotans don't know that.
She's kind of a rubber stamp is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, she votes with Obama and Franken 95% of the time. And the Heritage scorecard came out a couple of weeks ago and showed that she's actually got a more liberal voting record than Keith Ellison. Minnesotans have no idea. They think about Amy Klobuchar in a particular way.
Sure.
But they've got to look at her in the reference of her votes, which is a whole totally different story.
You, when you were speaking earlier, you used a lot of Reagan type language, Reagan-esque. What was the takeaway comment that Reagan said that kind of captures your mind? Was it the 1968 Goldwater speech? Was it another speech?
Yeah, I mean, time for choosing speech is a pretty important one. He also talked about America as a city on a hill. He talked about what we should be, what we can be, what our values are. What people loved about Reagan is his optimism. And he talked about what America truly can be when we unleash the potential of the American people, when we let the free enterprise system thrive. When we allow job creators to do what they do best, when we maintain a strong military, that we're proud of who we are and what we represent, when we stand on our values. That's what drew people to Ronald Reagan, that city on the hill concept. So that's what I think of the most when I think of Ronald Reagan. Although he was one of those canary in the coal mines in 1964 talking about the crisis we would face as a nation, and he was able to be that part of the solution, moving us in the right direction in the 1980s.
Sure. Presently, some people think that the Republican Party is kind of splittered. We got the conservatives, you got the blue blood Republicans that are more on the liberal side, and then we got the Ron Paul type libertarians. Are you planning to appeal to the biggest numbers possible? How can we get together as a party?
I'm just going to be who I am. It's not about shape-shifting or appealing. It's about saying what I mean and living up to it. I'm a conservative Republican. That's what I believe will get our country back on track. I think we need to limit government's role, unleash the private sector, get rid of regulations, lessen the tax burden on companies, maintain a strong national defense. I believe in the values. I'm pro-life. I believe in traditional values. So those are all the aspects of what shape who I am. And I think those are broadly appealing, not just to conservatives, but to Minnesotans writ large, provided they're communicated the right way.
Sure.
So I'm not looking to sort of try to fit with others. I'm going to stand up for what I believe to be true, and I think that will draw support.
Last question. What was the toughest interview you've done yet? Was it the Glenn Beck interview, or was there something else?
No, I would say there were a couple hardball with Chris Matthews interviews on MSNBC.
Oh, really? So you went on with Chris Matthews?
I was a regular on that show for a couple of years, going on to debate the Iraq War. I would be me versus General Wesley Clark with Chris Matthews in the middle. And there were some contentious debates there. So I've been in some nasty debates over some contentious issues. That's part of what I think prepares me as well for this race, is we're ultimately going to need to debate Amy Klobuchar and do what the media won't do, which is ask her the tough questions. I've been in that lion's den and I'm prepared to make the argument, ask her the tough questions and force her to answer them and then have a good response of my own.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you talking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you for having me.